Welcome to episode number 119 of the Marine Layer podcast. We have our two Mariners storylines. Ty France and the third base platoon are tearing the cover off the ball. We have our mailbag, and we'll close out the show with Speak Your Mind.
Here's your guys' reminder. If you're listening to the show, do us a big favor. Download these episodes. Leave us a 5-star review. It helps us out a bunch. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Like this video as well. Leave a comment. And then make sure to check us out on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. 1-1 from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording here on Thursday evening, April 11th, on an off day. And I hope Cal Raleigh made it back to the country. Did they seize him at the border?
They did not, and I can confirm that he did make it back to the country because here on this off day, I saw the Mariners had a team event tonight. Not a team event, but it was for Scott Service's charity event. So that was back in the Seattle area. I saw pictures of Cal Raleigh at it. Therefore, he was not held up in Canada. Good for the Mariners.
That's good. I feel like they could hold a grudge against him, though, and find an excuse to seize his visa. Like, buddy, this doesn't come without repercussions.
Wouldn't that actually hurt the Blue Jays? Because that would mean he'd stay in Canada and continue to just torch baseballs in Canada, probably against the Blue Jays.
But he couldn't play for the Mariners. It's like addition by subtraction.
Well, maybe despite John Schneider's efforts, they were unsuccessful.
Does he have any lobbying power with the border agents? I don't think so.
Well,
Shout out to Cal, though. Yeah, I know he eventually, at the end of last year, when he made his displeasures about the team, and he apologized and decided that wasn't the right thing to say. Well, when he was clapping back at John Schneider again after this series, he didn't hold back. Like, I thought he might be a little bit more reserved. It's okay to say, like, oh, well, I don't really pay attention to things other people say. No, he knew. He very well knew.
He roasted John Schneider, but honestly, in the nicest way possible. He said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, which is what they teach you in first, second, third grade. And Cal's bringing that back to life to John Schneider. It's like, hey, basic rule of thumb, buddy, the golden rule. Treat other people how you want to be treated. You're going to tell me I'm not a tough guy to pitch to? You know what I do instead? I come back and haunt you this year, next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. And he's going to continue to do it too.
Like, how much of a fuck you was it in game 3? Opposite field, right-handed hitting home run. He does not do that. Cal Raleigh does not hit opposite field home runs hitting right-handed. He does not do that. But he did for the Blue Jays.
And he did, yeah. And he does it in Toronto. Not that he doesn't hit the Blue Jays well in Seattle, but it feels like in that building, it's taken to another level.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Cal. He's a real G. And shout out to the Mariners getting that much needed win on Wednesday. I mean, really needed that win. And we are talking about, like, shocker, Lyle. The game was saved by a miraculous play by the infield defense. The game is over in the 9th inning without great infield defensive play, which is not really something I expected.
If Ernie Clement hits that ball 6 inches further and it's out of the reach of Jorge Polanco, what is the mood sitting here tonight recording this podcast?
The season is over.
Well, more or less. However,
do you have a counter argument?
I don't know, because we joke over text season over almost every single day. Like almost any loss, we'll send joking text back and forth saying season's over. But what would we actually say here on the podcast? We'd probably be sitting here stewing, frustrated, saying, how in the world are they going to fix this? We would have been talking about them scoring 1 run again. So shout out both Cal Raleigh and Jorge Polanco because they uplifted some spirits. Oh, And shout out our guy, friend of the pod, Taylor Saucedo, for reversing the mojo on Twitter. Shout out to you, Sauce. For those who didn't see, he tweets probably 3 hours before the game, Babe Ruth is real. That's it. That's the tweet. Babe Ruth is real. Side note, he hadn't tweeted anything in multiple weeks. And I send that to TJ. I wake up and see that. I see that tweet. And I was like, I think my exact words were, what the fuck is this? With a bunch of laughing emojis. Because we said, you don't believe that? You just spent all last week telling the Baseball Hall of Fame that it's fake. And then you say somebody on the team probably hacked his account or something and is just messing with them. And then we started to realize, oh, maybe he's doing this to get the baseball gods on his supposed good side to try to reverse the bad mojo. Sure enough, the Mariners win. 10 minutes after that game ends, Taylor Saucedo quote tweets his own tweet with the winking face from WandaVision. I'm forgetting the actress's name, but the winking face from WandaVision being like, yeah, I got you. You see, I don't believe that. I just wanted the Mariners win, and I wanted to reverse the mojo. So shout out Sauce.
Yeah, we can credit Sauce to ending the slide. And hopefully now that the baseball gods are back on the Mariners' side, hey, 15 in a row?
Oh, if the Mariners rip off 15 wins in a row for Taylor Saucedo tweeting that Babe Ruth is real, like, somebody
I think we might have to sway him at that point. I think he might actually have to second guess himself.
Or one of the TV outlets is going to have to do a story on him. Taylor Saucedo reverses Mariners jinx? ?
So would he have to believe Babe Ruth is real at that point, though? Because it worked.
Would he ever actually internally believe that? Or would he just tell people?
Hey, you can spin PR however you want.
Maybe he'd do that.
Yeah. So it always looks a lot better that way. So shout out Taylor Saucedo. And I also love the uniform comments under it. It's like, are you all right?
Yeah.
Blink twice. Blink twice if you're being kidnapped.
Yeah, all these people saying, did you lose a bet, Sauce? Or like, Sauce, are you okay, dude? Like, this ain't normal for you. Or there was a bunch of replies like that, which was hilarious. And then it was even more hilarious 10 minutes after that game ended. He wasted no time hopping on Twitter after that win, being like, yeah, I got you guys.
You'll have to, when you're there today and throughout this weekend, seeing like, yeah, say, good job, man. You did it.
Oh, we have a lot to talk about this weekend. Between that and between the Hall of Fame coming across this take, yeah, there's a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, well, we look forward to hearing it.
Yeah.
Let's get into our Mariners storylines, and let's start with the latest driveline darling, Ty France. Through 2 weeks of the season, it looks like all of the stuff that Ty France went to driveline to work on, it looks like he's fixed, Lyle.
Through 2 weeks, it looks like he's totally fixed. Now, we'll have to see it sustained for a long period of time, but right now, Ty France is hitting .316 with a 116 WRC plus, and he hasn't even begun to hit for power yet. Let's just start with that. The dude is tearing the cover off the ball. He's barreling it up. He's hitting the ball hard. His Baseball Savant page is bright red. How much more could you ask from the guy from the first 2 weeks? There's a reason they moved him way up in the lineup so fast.
Do you want some comparisons for how hard he's hitting the baseball? So he's currently hitting the ball a little over 95 miles an hour on average. Last year, the only player in Major League Baseball who hit the ball harder on average than that was
Aaron Judge?
Correct.
Oh.
And he was an outlier. He was like outlier farther ahead than everyone else. In fact, Aaron Judge last year hit the ball 3 miles an hour harder than the second place, which was Ronald Acuna. So yeah, that was it. It's just Aaron Judge in front of Ty France in terms of what last year's sample represented. Ty France, if he were to somehow keep this mark up the entire season, would be ahead of Ronald Acuna and Shohei Ohtani of last year. That's hitting the ball pretty dang hard. There's really no holes to poke in what Ty France has done so far. His strikeout rate has ticked up a little bit, but he's hitting the ball at the ideal launch angle. He's hitting it hard. He's barreling the baseball, the right combination of exit velocity and launch angle. Eventually, some of this stuff's got to start flying over the fence, you would think.
So that's the one area with Ty where you can say, this can still get a little bit better. He needs to start lifting the ball a little bit, which I'm sure that's going to come with time. He's hitting the ball this hard. You would think it's only a matter of time. It's interesting, though. He's been a little bit of on the wrong side of luck with some of the extra base hits. So this fluctuates. There's two different pinpoints here to look at. Ty France has a sky-high batting average on balls in play right now. His BABIP is 429, which is not going to sustain. That cannot even come close to sustaining throughout a full season. But the flip side of that is Ty France, when you look at a player's WOBA versus xWOBA, meaning quality of contact, that's what that stat measures, he has been the unluckiest hitter in baseball. So his WOBA sits at 325. His xWOBA sits at 437. There is no bigger discrepancy in baseball right now through the first 2 weeks than Ty France in terms of those two categories. So what that says to me is hits are falling. He's just been really unlucky in terms of singles versus extra base hits. A lot of those singles have not turned into doubles yet. He only has 2 doubles. So you would think over time more are going to start to accumulate.
And I think I have the reason for why hasn't had quite as many. He needs to pull the ball a little bit more. He's been very heavy up the middle. I think it's nearly 60% of his base hits are going straight up the middle, which is fine, but that's the big part of the ballpark. And Aaron Judge. Ty France is not Aaron Judge, so he's not going to pelt 30 homers a year over the center field fence. He's only pulling the ball a little under 20% of the time, which is an outlier low number for him. Small sample over 2 weeks. His career average, for example, is about 37% pull percentage. He's at 18 right now. So if we want, I think the main reason for why he's not hitting for more power, I think it's squarely that his average launch angle is not too much different. You know what's funny? Looking at his exit velocities, his max exit velocity is lower than it was last year. His average is just a lot higher. That speaks just the consistency of when he's putting the bat on the ball. Not only is he's hitting the baseball, but he's hitting the baseball in the right spot on the bat. It is finding the barrel so much more often, it seems like, than last season. Now, I think there's less really reason to worry for Ty France because there's one of two things are going to happen. Either his numbers are going to go down, his exit velocities will go down, his barrels will go down, and his home runs will stay at a low mark like they are right now, or they're going to eventually start matching the quality of contact and how hard he's hitting the baseball. Those are the only two options that are going to happen. So it's either going down or it's going up. No real in between there. But there's another example here. I went back and I looked at J.P. Crawford's season last year when he first came off of Driveline and how long it took him to get his power stroke. Guess, Lyle, how many home runs did J.P. Crawford have in the first 2 months of last year?
It took him a little bit to get going before we really saw those Driveline results kick in. I'm going to say, he had 19 last year. First 2 months, 4?
3.
Yeah, so not a lot.
That's it. Just 3. It took him until September when he hit 7 in September and October. So these things take a little while. And like Ty France could be at the point where, okay, I'm peppering a lot of line drives, but damaged fly balls, pull fly balls have not quite worked its way into the swing yet. And that could be a timing thing, getting down a little bit earlier and getting out in front of the baseball instead of waiting for it to travel in and sort of hitting it up the middle the other way. So that's probably the only thing where Ty France is missing. Can he keep this up while also pulling the baseball? Because that is the peak damage profile.
You know what's way up for Ty France this year? His line drive rate. Now, again, we're 2 weeks in, but here's the comparison. Last year's line drive rate was a little over 26%. Now, it's over 46%. We're 2 weeks in. That's a 20% jump in terms of line drives off the bat of Ty France. We know last year he was grounding into a lot of double plays. He was popping balls up fairly weakly. It's a lot less of that right now. He is squaring balls up. And if he can just start to pull some of them, like you mentioned, you're going to see balls leave the ballpark because he is clearly hitting the ball with much more authority right now than he was all of last year.
I don't think Ty France is going to sustain the season hitting the ball at an Aaron Judge level. It would be a major improvement this year if Ty France ended the year with an average exit velocity over 90. That would be good. Over 90. Over 90 is about where good starts. And then once you get up to about 91, 92, then you're entering in the pretty good territory. And then from then on, then you're on the Aaron Judge scale. No, well, not Aaron Judge, but you're on the pretty good scale. Because most major leaguers, Aaron Judge was 97 average last year. And then everyone else was about 94.5 and lower. Just to put that into some some perspective. So you can be pretty good at 92 to 94, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what that's the zone for Ty France seems at his peak around 91 to 92. That seems about how hard he hits the baseball.
Yeah. And for reference for people, 95 miles an hour is considered a hard hit ball. So if he's averaging just a little bit below that, that's good. That means he's hitting a lot of balls over 95 miles an hour. A lot of balls over 95. So that'd be great. In terms of Ty's profile, look, he's probably never going to walk much. That's never been part of his game. But if he goes back to hitting the way he was in 21, and it's certainly the early half of 2022, or even something close to that, he doesn't have to walk that much. He gets on base because he gets hits, plain and simple. And he'll hit for doubles, and he'll hit for a little bit of power. It's a very good sign the way he started.
In case anyone was curious, Driveline did not make him any faster, though, unfortunately.
No. And I will say his OPS isn't through the roof yet. It's only at 718, despite having a decent WRC plus at 116. But again, he's only got 2 extra base hits right now. They're both doubles. So when Ty starts to hit for more power, combined with the profile he's got right now, that OPS is going to climb up.
Don't actually go back to the point I just made. I kind of expected maybe his sprint speed to be a tiny bit faster than it's projecting right now. It really must just be the eye test over the actual results so far, because they still have him as a 6th percentile runner.
We heard Scott Service say it in spring training. He said, thrilled with what Ty's done at Driveline. I don't think you're going to see him stealing many bases. And I think that's true.
Yeah, I think, confirmed. I will agree with that.
So Ty getting back to hitting the ball hard is a great sign. I think a lot of people felt like this was a possibility, and to see it put into action now, awesome. You know what a lot of people didn't expect as we transition here to our second storyline? The fact that the third base platoon is really hitting. And before we get to that, that's a little teaser. Before we dive into that topic, I want to talk to you guys about our friends over at Pagach's Pub 85. You want to go watch this third base platoon continue to tear the cover off the ball? Do it over there. You can head over to Pagach's Pub 85. That's over in Kirkland. They've got great happy hour specials, great food specials. You have an awesome time with your friends. There's darts, there's pool tables, everything you need to have to go and have a good time. So you want happy hour drinks? Those are on Mondays and Fridays, happy hours from 2 to 6 p.m. You'll get $3 domestic beers, $4 Manny's and Blue Moons, $4 Mac and Jacks, $4 Wells, and $4 house wines. So you want some great pizza or a bunch of great food, you want to go play some games and watch some sports with your friends, that's your spot. It's Pagach's Pub 85 in Kirkland. So back to this third base platoon. Josh Rojas and Luis Urias, through the first couple weeks of the season, they have really stung the ball, I think, harder than they've really put out a higher offensive production, and I think most people were expecting them to.
Yeah, more than I expected. If they were going to have any 2-week stretch this year where they're going to have a combined 123 WRC plus, I think people would be pleasantly surprised. There's a little bit of unsustainability with the both of them. Rojas has a batting average on balls in play right now, a little bit under 500. Luis Urias is striking out 40% of the time. Those numbers, some of those numbers will not sustain themselves. We'll find out which ones actually do. But man, it's like both of them have strung together some really solid at-bats. I mean, Urias is getting dragged through the mud all spring. He's looked perfectly serviceable at the plate as an offensive tandem. Here's something that's interesting. It's essentially so they're the 4th best hitting position on the team right now. 4th best. That's pretty solid. I mean, we expected this position to be 8th, right? 8th, about 8th on the team. That's pretty crazy. Overall, here's one last banger of a stat: 8th best hitting third base position in baseball.
You say we expected them to be the 8th best hitting position on the team. Who was going to be 9th? I think a lot of people expected them to be dead last.
Maybe a outlier bad season in the outfield, injuries.
That could be.
Probably, give or take.
But people didn't expect a lot. And Luis Urias, to your point, so he's striking out way too much. I don't think he's going to strike out 40% of the time all year. I think that's going to come down. I will give him credit. He is also walking a lot right now, well over 10%. And he's hitting the ball really hard. Now, he doesn't qualify for the Savant League leaderboards. He hasn't had enough at bats. But when you just look at his profile, it shows that he has stung the ball so far. Like, he's hit it very hard. And let's give the guy credit. He's had multiple clutch hits already. In Milwaukee, back in his old stomping grounds, he had the insurance home run, and he had that double. So Urias is doing what he's been asked to do. And honestly, he's done so while also having to face a lot of right-handed pitching so far. He has faced more right-handed pitching than I expected Urias to in the early going of the season. Now, I think we've started to see that reel back a little bit. I would bet you will see him mostly just hit lefties moving forward, which is what he was brought here to do, hit lefties. You know what Luis Urias has done against lefties in his short sample size so far? Hit the ball really hard. His OPS is well over 800 against left-handed hitters. Pretty sure I had that in my notes. Yeah, I did. He is OPSing over 800 against left-handed bats right now. 853 to be exact. Now, very small sample, but he came here to hit lefties. He's hitting lefties.
Do you want to hear the names at third base that this platoon's better than this year so far? Manny Machado, Max Muncy, Rafael Devers, Nolan Arenado. Those are some notable names.
I would like to add one.
Yeah.
Because I know, again, I'm going to preface this by saying, I know it's only 2 weeks.
I'm ready. Matt Chapman.
That's actually not where I was going.
Whoa.
So.
Okay, but I think that's true, actually, still.
Matt Chapman is another. But again, Josh Rojas currently has a 136 WRC plus. Luis Urias, 104 WRC plus. He's crushing lefties. Again, Urias has an 853 OPS against left-handed bats right now, which is what he was brought here to do. The two of them have combined for an 0.2 F4 so far. Urias and Rojas. And you said they've combined for a 123 WRC plus. There is a current third baseman out there who has a 688 OPS, a 91 WRC plus, and also an 0.2 F4. His name is Eugenio Suarez. So for everybody that saw the hot start and was freaking out, things can change pretty quickly, can't they? Because now all of a sudden, those two positions have been equally productive, and the Mariners believing that Suarez may lose a lot of bat speed moving forward. In fact, I think he lost a lot last year. He couldn't catch up to any of those high fastballs. Through 2 weeks in Arizona, he hasn't been great. Again, he's equally valuable right now to Urias and Rojas. He has not put up the offensive production that those two have. His OPS is below 700. So this third base platoon's doing okay. If the Mariners had Gino right now, they wouldn't really be in that much different a position.
I have one more name.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think it is?
It's not Chapman. It's not Gino. It's not Manny.
Relevant to this week.
Relevant to this week. Is it Blue Jays?
You made a big deal about him yesterday.
Yesterday. Kyle Seager? No, that wouldn't make sense. Kyle Seager.
No,
I don't know.
I'll give you one more guess.
If I made a big deal about him yesterday, so yesterday being Wednesday, because we're recording this on Thursday. So I would assume this would be the Blue Jays.
Abraham Toro.
How could I forget? That's actually
there was a suggestion out there that the Mariners should seriously consider going after him and putting him at DH because of what he was doing at the plate. That was a serious suggestion.
By who? Me?
No. Underneath the tweet you made.
Yeah, so for those who haven't seen the tweet, I'm sitting there watching the Wednesday Blue Jays Mariners game. It's 1-1 going into the ninth inning. The Mariners have not given Logan Gilbert basically any run support. And it obviously had been a tough couple of series to begin with. And I'm sitting there saying, win or lose, I think I've got a funny idea for a tweet that could also piss TJ off the minute he sees it. And I think it's Matthew McConaughey's voice. Sometimes you have to go back in order to go forward. And I took that audio bed and put a bunch of Abe Toro highlights in the Mariners in a Mariners uniform across it. And it actually got some people talking on Twitter, and somebody commented. TJ was already mad the second he saw it. Shocker, as we've talked about on the pod. You don't want to get TJ going about Abe Toro. You want to get his blood pressure to rise? That's where you go. And somebody responds in the comments, he's actually hitting pretty well in Oakland right now. The Mariners should get him back.
Absolutely not. I refuse.
You responded with those exact words to that person. Absolutely not, quote unquote. So yes, Josh Rojas and Luis Urias. Better than Abe Toro.
Yeah. Oh, confirmed. Yeah, I can confirm that. Yeah. Shout out to them, though. Like, if they keep up a 126 WRC plus, might have to carve for the whole season. Might have to carve out a space in the Mariners Hall of Fame for these two. That would be a historic achievement.
So I will say, I would love to see Josh Rojas up the walks a bit. It's 2 weeks. Things can change drastically moving forward, and especially within the span of a couple games. But this is a guy who's walked a lot in his career. He's not really walking right now at all. And he didn't walk a ton last year, not at the rate he was walking in Arizona. So I would love to see Josh Rojas pick that walk rate up as the season moves forward, because if he can be a 10% walk rate guy like he's been a lot of his career, that is an additional facet to his game that can play a big factor. And Urias, he shouldn't strike out this much. He, like, over his career, the numbers say he should not strike out this much. I'm assuming it's going to come down. I just hope with him, the power can remain somewhat consistent. He can stay on the field, and he walks. Urias has always been a guy that walks too. So if he can draw some walks, that's a couple of big keys for these guys. Obviously, Urias is probably not going to hit 300, but if he can have some power, if they just play him against lefties, which is what he's best suited to do, he can play a role here.
And hopefully these two not playing every day will find a way to stay consistent. Like, that's probably the biggest worry here, not getting thrown out of your timing with not getting to play every day. But overall, though, through 2 weeks, I mean, the offense you cannot complain about. Now, probably shield your eyes looking at the OAA numbers, 26th in baseball, outs above average. Yeah, kind of that. If we're missing Gino anywhere, we're missing him right there.
Well, notice when I read Gino's numbers, I didn't mention the defense.
Right. So yeah, exactly.
Of course, Gino's the better defender. We know that. But again, by value, you compare the F-Wars, they're the same right now.
Yeah.
So the Mariners would not be in any different a position right now with Eugenio Suarez than they'd be with Luis Urias and Josh Rojas.
Yeah, you're right, which is why I say it's just so ironic. Wednesday's the Wednesday game and was saved by a miraculous defensive and field play, albeit at second base. I don't know if the defense gets any better. I don't think the defense of that position gets any better. People are just going to have to close their eyes and hope they make that play as the season goes on.
Urias did say, he was on one of the Root post-game interviews in the Milwaukee series. It was after the Saturday game, I believe. And he said, when asked about how's your arm feeling, he said, yeah, it feels good now. I'm feeling good over there. Now, I don't think that's going to mean his defense is going to take some massive step forward, but maybe instead of spiking balls in the dirt like we saw in the second game of the season, which forced Ty France to make a really nice pick over at first base, he'll put some more accurate throws right in the chest of Ty France, and at least that asset or that facet will be cleaned up a little bit.
I hope.
Yeah.
I sure hope so.
We know he had some injuries in the going into camp and all that stuff. And the fact he said, oh, my arm feels much better now. That's a nice sign. Hopefully, again, if the range isn't going to get much better, hopefully at least the throws across the diamond can be more accurate. And they have been more accurate in the last couple games.
Good.
Yeah. Well, should we get to the mailbag?
Let's do it.
This won't be a full mailbag. Obviously, we had some storylines to get to, but we did want to do a mailbag episode. We wanted to take some questions. So we've got a handful here. We've got them lined up. The first one we've got, let me read the names of people that sent us these comments just to make sure we're giving them a nice little shout out here. But first question comes from Zach Rector 20 on Instagram. He says, how worried are you about Julio? This could have been a storyline in itself.
Not worried.
I'm not worried. I don't love that he continues to get off to slow starts in April. This also happens to be the worst of the 3 starts he's gotten off to. We're talking about a 44 WRC plus right now. I know Julio's going to figure it out. He is the last player on the team I'm worried about. But when they need him to win games early in April, it doesn't help that he's putting up those offensive numbers. Outside of the game-winning hit against the Red Sox, it is a little bit frustrating because, as we know, they missed the playoffs by 2 games last year. These April games do matter.
I think we can use different terminology. I'm not worried about Julio. I'm just kind of, I would say I'm disappointed with the fast starts. I'm sure he understands he needs to play better in April. Like he knows that. And I think it really boils down to he's got to just hit the ball in the air. He's having no problem scalding the baseball right now. The problem is he's mashing it like at unideal launch angles. You got to hit the ball in the air to do damage. And he hasn't done that so far. If he was hitting more fly balls right now, he would be doing significantly better. I'm sure of it. He would have a couple home runs by now because he's like in the Blue Jays series, he was scalding the baseball, but he didn't have much to show for it.
Would you like some numbers to contextualize that?
Sure.
His fly ball rate last year, 24.5%. Right now, it sits at 12.1%. He's not hitting the ball in the air at all, basically. Yep. He's hitting the ball hard. Now, his Savant page is about league average in terms of his hard hit profile right now. There are points, I should say, where Julio's hit the ball hard, like we saw in the Toronto series. But those hard hit balls have been low line drives and ground balls. They haven't been fly balls. And the fly ball plus hard hit ball, that's where the power and the home runs start to play a factor. That's where the damage happens. We haven't seen that yet.
And it continues to just be, when I say like disappointed in Julio, like we cannot say enough how much this team goes as Julio goes. How many of these Mariners problems would not exist if Julio Rodriguez was scorched earth the first 2 weeks of the season? Would you not be complaining as much? Probably not. Probably not. I don't think we'd be complaining all that much, to be honest. I didn't mean to speak for you, but I'm pretty confident to say we'd be complaining a whole lot less if the Mariners managed to get average pitching and an unbelievable Julio for 2 weeks. Like think about like how many problems that solves for the Mariners if he's able to do that. I mean, we saw what happened in August.
100%.
It tells everything. It tells the entire story. So when Julio is unable to do what Julio usually does, it magnifies everything else, which we don't like, which is not a good thing.
100%. That's all I was going to say. You can speak for me because I was going to say the same thing. It's 100%. That's true. I think obviously he's going to turn it around. Obviously, we'd love to see him get off to some faster starts because we talked about how important a fast start in April would be for him. And yeah, I think there would be a lot less to talk about right now if Julio was going off. The Mariners are 5-8 right now. If Julio was scorching the ball already, they'd be what? They'd probably have an additional at least one win, maybe two. Maybe they'd be 7-6 right now, and we'd be talking about
8-5
or that. And then we just talk about, okay, the starting pitching needs to get a little bit better, but you know what? You know what nobody's worried about? The effectiveness of this starting rotation, because Luis Castillo, George Kirby, everybody is way too good to keep this up all year.
Right.
But Julio's not hitting right now, so it's a little bit more of a magnified story that the offense was the highlighted issue a lot of last year, and so far through 13 games, it's been up and down so far this year.
It just, and again, disappointing. It I know Julio probably feels that this shouldn't be happening, but
yeah,
you know, it is.
Yeah.
What?
No, at some point we're going to look back on this and laugh because again, we're not worried about Julio Rodriguez. At some point, he's going to break out of this by going 13 for 20 with a couple of home runs, some stolen bases, a couple great plays in the field. They'll put it behind him. But yes, these games all matter in April. We saw the Mariners miss the playoffs by 2 games last year. They got off to a slow start. They have gotten off to some slow starts the last few years, and it hasn't helped them.
Mm-hmm. Think of it. Believe exactly 1 year ago was that when they blew that game against the Cubs, right? Just for some perspective. Is that right?
Was that a year ago today when they went up big and Chris Flexen gave up 8 runs or something like that?
Yeah. No, here's the story. You and I it's 8-1. You and I are like, all right, let's record now. Game's over. Right? I think that's how it was.
I forgot.
And then in the middle of it, look, it's like, what? I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
You know, now that you say that, that rings a bell. That was not fun.
No. And probably the last time we tried recording during a game, unless it was an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
We
were pretty early on back then. So you know what? We learn as we go.
Yeah, we do. Before we get to our next mailbag question, let's hear from Game Time. Have you ever tried getting tickets to see your favorite team this season and either the price was too high, the seats are bad, the interface wasn't usable, or something else? That sure happened to all of us more than we could count. That won't happen with Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. Mariners versus Cubs this weekend, guys. I'm seeing tickets for as low as $28 tonight on Friday, $30 on Saturday, and $25 on Sunday. You can save even more money with zone deals where you choose the section and Game Time chooses the seats. Shop smarter with all-in pricing feature where you don't have any surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, the next question on the mailbag. This comes from Instagram as well. Zach Olson with an O, with a 0, instead of an O in the Olson. Could we see Ryan Bliss up within the next month if the offense continues to struggle?
I don't think so. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, asking a prospect to come up and save, quote unquote, an offense or even spark plug an offense purely because of desperation is fairly irresponsible. Now, these 2 guys are much different levels of prospects, but I am going to use the example. 2021, the Mariners offense struggled out of the gate. They asked Jared Kelenic after 6 games in Tacoma to come up and try to save the offense, and it didn't go well. It didn't go well at all. It didn't do Kelenic any favors. It didn't do the Mariners any favors. I don't think they should be doing that with Ryan Bliss just because they feel like the offense in this scenario isn't where they want it to be. If Ryan Bliss isn't ready, if Bliss is ready in a month, then great. That's another story. But I think Ryan Bliss needs a little more time in Tacoma because my second reason here is he's currently got a 66 WRC plus in Tacoma. Last year, he started slow, got hot toward the end of the year. He still only put up a 97 WRC plus down there when it was all said and done at the end of 2023. So he's only played about 70 games in AAA. I think you need to let him be fully ready, dominate PCL pitching, and then let him come up without any issues when he is fully ready. But to yank him up after a month just because you feel like hypothetically the offense isn't in a great spot, I don't think that's a great idea for the team or for Ryan Bliss himself.
And if you were to choose a prospect to be the quote-unquote save the offense prospect, it's not like, no offense to Ryan Bliss, it's probably not him. He's not that kind of prospect.
Yeah, he can play a nice role, but I don't like the reaction when Ryan Bliss gets called up. People will be very excited for him. We'll be excited for him. Like, we talked to Ryan Bliss in spring training. He was awesome. Not only is he a very good player, but really good dude too. But I don't think the fan perception for a Ryan Bliss call up would be the same as a Cole Young call up, for example. Cole Young is more, and even Cole Young's not quite this type of hitter, but Cole Young would be more this team really wants to spark plug this offense. Look who they're calling up. That's a little more that scenario opposed to Ryan Bliss. Ryan Bliss is a guy that you'll see him play second base. He'll probably platoon a little bit. And in time, you could see him turn into a very productive second baseman because he's proven to be a very good bat in the minor leagues. But I don't think he's that, at least Jared Kelenic type prospect level that really could turn an entire offense around. So again, with Ryan Bliss, the best thing you can do for him is let him be ready when you call him up. So then he can play the role that he needs to play.
There's one prospect in all of baseball who's a save the offense type of prospect, and the Orioles called him up this week. Mm-hmm. That's it. He's the only one. Right. That's it. The only one I would classify as that kind of guy. Right. And obviously he's in a loaded system. He doesn't need to save any sort. Like Jackson Holiday was batting ninth when he got called up. Right. That's how you're supposed to treat these guys and let them sort of ease into it. I think it does nothing but a disservice to try and treat Ryan Bliss like that. Oh, no pressure. Our team can't hit. You have to solve it. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. That's not a way to go it. Also, like, just looking how the offense is currently structured, who exactly is he replacing? Right? Third base unit's pulling their weight. We just highlighted that. Ty France is pulling his weight. We also just highlighted that. You replacing Jorge Polanco? No. Are you replacing JP Crawford? No. Okay. Well, are you going to put him at DH and replace Mitch Garver? I don't think so. Right? So, like, it feels like that kind of answers the question.
So maybe he play a bench role if he got called up and see a couple starts a week. But again, I don't know if that moves the needle in terms of full offensive production of an entire team.
And so look, it does him no favors. That is a disservice to Ryan Bliss to call him up and stick him on the bench.
That's true too. Look, I mean, it's not. I shouldn't even say not a bad question. It's a good question. People want to know when Ryan Bliss could get up. And I think we may see him this year. I just don't think it's going to be in the next month, personally, when he's got a 66 WRC plus right now in Tacoma. It's early. He's only played about 10 games. But I think that's the best thing this team can do for Ryan Bliss is just give him his time to develop. And when he's ready, call him up. If I had to guess when we'd see Bliss, I would guess somewhere in the middle of the summer.
And I don't think they're going to call him up because the major league team is not hitting in summer.
No, it'll be because Ryan Bliss himself is ready.
Right. Correct.
So, yeah, again, certainly a good question. People want to know what's up with Ryan Bliss. I just think that might be a little bit of a premature call-up if they were to do it that soon. So that's my guess. Obviously, we're giving our best guesses here. We don't know for sure, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully, they don't need Ryan Bliss to save an offense. Hopefully, when Ryan Bliss comes up, this offense is firing on all cylinders, and he only helps. So, yeah. Okay, third question. This question comes from, it's a YouTube question from Nathan Starasta on YouTube. Do you believe Scott Service is on the hot seat this season?
I don't think he is. But on the other side, it's hard to argue the fact he still does not have an extension for next year. Sure, he's tied in with Jerry, but, this is a Scott Service question, not a Jerry question. So could he be coaching for his job? Whether that be in the eyes of Jerry, whether that be in the eyes of himself, and he makes the decision that he wouldn't want to be here after next year. It's kind of hard to argue against. Managers who aren't on the hot seat have guaranteed years in the future. And Scott Service doesn't.
I don't know if that decision's one-sided or not. I don't know if that's a Mariners don't want to extend him type of thing. That could be a Scott Service decision. If I were to have to pick between one of the two sides, that's the side I'm picking. I don't know that for sure. We don't have any way to confirm that. But that's what it feels like to me. Because the Mariners are not going out and hiring Craig Counsell, for example. They're not making some splash of a managerial hire like that. So the clubhouse loves Scott Service. He is the trust of his players. The players love playing for him. He clearly works very well with the front office. It's a pretty good, seamless fit. So the only reason to me why Scott Service would not be back next year is because it would be his choice. It's hard to replace Scott Service. There's always discourse online, right? But he has done a lot for this team. How many managers, like we talked about, are flying around the country getting on the same page with all of his players in the offseason because of something he didn't do, something that ownership did, and he decided to take matters into his own hands and make up for it. It's hard to find people out there like that. And he's a very good manager, who makes sound decisions. Even if you don't always agree with them, he makes sound decisions, like we talked about on the Wednesday episode with why they pulled Bryce Miller. Give a very good explanation for that. Scott Service isn't here next year. To answer the question, I don't think he is on the hot seat from ownership. I think Scott Service may be thinking about what is the best course of action for me in terms of my managerial career moving forward.
And some of that probably has to do with Jerry, too. Jerry's decision, because they are tied in together. I don't think Scott Service is in Seattle without Jerry DiPoto. Like, if Jerry doesn't think this place is the future for him next year, then even if Scott really, really enjoys it, it just doesn't seem like he goes and works with someone else. It seems like those two are too intertwined from the start, and Jerry hiring Scott when he got hired here in late 2015. Seems like that's always been the case. Scott Service should not be on the hot seat. No. If you're going through what qualities you want in a manager and what kind of process you want to have a successful clubhouse and have a successful ground level of your organization on the field, he checks all the boxes. So that should lead you to be pretty comfortable in your job.
Let me make this once again as abundantly clear as I can possibly speak. If we get word, whenever that may be, that Scott Service and Jerry DiPoto are not back here in Seattle next year, and that could be one of two ways, whether that's they do not get retained or they choose to go elsewhere. Oh, I am going to unleash fury on that podcast. Absolute fury. And you know what? If they choose to go somewhere else, 0% of that fury will be directed at Scott Service and Jerry Dipoto. I really hope both of them stay. I really do. But if they choose to go elsewhere, I can't blame them for all the reasons we all know. I can't blame them if they decide they want an opportunity somewhere else. So when I say I'm going to unleash fury on that podcast that would proceed after those hypothetical decisions, you know who that fury is going to be directed at. You know who that's going to be directed at. And I'll leave it at that. You all know. I don't even need to say it.
It's a good transition into our next mailbag question. This comes on Twitter from Kyle. And Kyle asks, can you rank your 3 best pitches on the Mariners pitching staff, starters and relievers included?
This was hard. I thought this was going to be easy. There was a lot of pitches I felt like I had to leave off this list because you only get 3. I did write down a couple of honorable mentions, but of the ones I had to pick, here's what I went with. Luis Castillo's fastball. I know he hasn't started great. I don't care about that. That is one of the best fastballs in baseball when it's on. Matt Brash's slider and Gregory Santos' slider. Yeah, can you tell I'm excited for those 2 guys to get back? I know we haven't seen Santos yet. Those 2 sliders are nuts. So I had to leave some off. Those were my 3.
You're giving Santos the crown without pitching like a single inning in a Mariners uniform?
It's not like he hasn't pitched in the big leagues. Go watch him pitch all of last year. He had a run value of 17 on his slider. It was higher than Brash's.
I can't give anyone that award if they haven't pitched yet. I can't do it. It's like so for my honorable mention, for example, Ryan Stanek is some pretty unbelievable stuff, but he's honorable mention because I don't think he's pitched enough. I haven't seen enough of it with my eyes to fully grasp the amazingness in a Mariners uniform.
Okay.
So, because, I'm going to let some Mariners bias come out in this. If you have pitched a while in a Mariners uniform, I'm going to give you the nod. And I still think my 3 can stack up.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off before you read those 3. If the Mariners in some miracle world got Garrett Cole on their roster, and somebody asked us this question before the season started, none of his pitches are on your list.
And he was still hurt, right?
Let's say it's the offseason. The Mariners in a magical dream world acquire Garrett Cole. And all of a sudden, we get a question in a mailbag that says, rank your 3 best pitchers on the Mariners team. Opening day is not yet started. You have not seen Garrett Cole throw a pitch for the Mariners. However, you have plenty see him pitched in the big leagues. Are you leaving him off your list? I'm not. That's why Santos is on my list.
I think you're trying to guilt me. You're trying to guilt me, Lyle.
You tried to guilt me into picking Gregory Santos. That slider's nuts, dude.
Well, I'm still pretty confident in my 3 pitches.
Okay.
At number 1, I have Brash's slider. At 2, I have Andres Munoz's slider. Oh, did you forget about that pitch? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't think so. And then Logan Gilbert's splitter.
So that was one of my honorable mentions. I had Gilbert's splitter and his slider in my honorable mentions because Logan's slider is awesome too.
It is. Not as good as a splitter, though.
And, yeah.
Anyways, those are my pitches. I find it really hard to match those 3 pitches. I mean, you get everything you want. You have a sweeper, you have a bullet slider, and then you have a splitter. Those are 3 the nastiest pitches in baseball.
Okay. I have Bryce Miller's splitter on my honorable mention list, too. And then I had George Kirby's fastball on my honorable mention list.
Okay. All pretty good pitches. They got a lot of really good pitches on this team. So,
well, again, this is why it was a tough exercise because there's all these pitches I had to leave off, which I felt bad about because somebody was getting left off. But I had to pick 3, and those were the 3 I picked. So shout out to this question. Shout out to Kyle on Twitter. This was a fun question.
Yeah, it was good. It's a good thought exercise.
Yeah, it is. Hey, on that note, especially for those of you watching on YouTube, rank your 3 Mariners pitches. Who have the best 3 Mariners pitches on the team? Drop them in the comments. Or if you're listening on the audio podcast, DM us too. Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want. Tell us your 3 best Mariners pitches. Who are they? Leave us a comment. I'll be interested to see. I'll be interested how they differ from TJ and I's list because I'm sure everybody has a different opinion, which is what makes this a fun exercise. Okay, last question. Another fun exercise. This comes from Ellie, and she says, if you got to choose a walk-up song for yourself, which song would it be and why?
I have some recency bias here. Do you think you could guess what it is?
I'm curious if it's going to be the same answer to mine. I don't have a guess, but I have a general thought. I'm going to let you answer first.
It's pretty recent. We Don't Trust You by Future. Metro.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. I listened to that song the first time, right at the top of the album. I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, this is a walk-up song.
That was on my list. So I had 2 songs from that list I wrote down. I wrote Like That or We Don't Trust You, which is, I guess for those who don't listen to hip hop, they're 2 new songs on the Future Metro Boomin album, which as we're recording this, there's a second part to the album that's coming out in just a couple hours. So by the time you all are listening to this, there will be a new album out by Future Metro Boomin called We Still Don't Trust You with a bunch of new songs. So maybe I'll pick one of those.
Who are they going to diss this time?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait to find out. Who else would be on the diss list?
I don't know. Maybe there's a J. Cole apology in there. He's going to rap an apology.
Oh yeah, there you go. The thing with me on this changes depending on new songs that come out. So like you, I have recency bias. If you had asked me last year, in fact, I think I said this on a podcast last year, I would have without hesitation picked Superhero as my walk-up song last year. Also Metro Boomin. So
also the first song on the album. No,
second song.
Second song on the album. First actual song on the album, I'll say.
Okay. So that would have been my pick last year. In high school, I used the song The Buzz is what it was called by Hermitude. It's like a trap music song. I mean, it does have words. What am I going to say? People probably know what it is. It was a pretty popular song back in 2016, 15, that time period. But I don't know if I'd still use that now. I'd probably pick something more recent, like one of these songs. But yeah, as TJ and I are both hip hop fans, I'm guessing we'd pick something in that range. I don't know if the two of us will be walking up to country songs anytime soon. That's for some people. I don't know if it's for the two of us. But
no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So what is the one you're choosing?
Oh, yeah, I didn't give a real answer on that, did you? Well, okay. You picked We Don't Trust You, so I'm going to pick Like That, also on that same album. Like the first part of that song where the beat's really good. First, what is it, 15, 20 seconds or whatever.
If you ever need, I love bass. I love good beats, and no one does it like Metro. So it's hard to beat. So if I ever need a walk-up song, it's you. Good chance it's one of his songs.
Yeah. Okay, same thing. We just asked people to comment their 3 Mariners pitches in the comments. Same thing. What would your walk-up song be? I'm genuinely curious what the different taste in music is across our listenership and what people feel like they want to walk up to the plate to. So drop it in our comments or DM us and tell us. Let us know.
Fun exercise, though. Thank you guys for all the mailbag questions. And next month, we'll do another mailbag, and it'll be exciting. Mm-hmm. We'll have a whole month more baseball to field questions about, and it'll be fun. Until then, let's get to Speak Your Mind. Okay, on Speak Your Mind this week, I'm just going to tee it off for you because I think this is a pretty good one. And then whatever else you want to speak about, we can do at the end. But I want to give a shout out to Ipe, the since prosecuted. He turned himself in. Anyways, former interpreter of Shohei Ohtani for his incredible betting record. Listen to this. His average bet, first of all, over the span of about 3 years, 3.5 years, give or take. Average bet of $12,800. He won $142 million. He lost $182 million. He lost in total net $40 million. And he essentially bet at a rate over the span of 2 years, Lyle, at a rate of about losing $10,000 an hour. That's how bad of a gambler he was.
So our Speak Your Mind's going to be on the same line, because I was going to say it's once again days like these that Twitter is just impeccable. It's not always fun. It's not always a fun place to be online all the time. However, days like these, between Ipe, between OJ, between Jordan Montgomery changing agents and leaving Scott Boras, it has been non-stop here on this Thursday. So to your point, yes, this factors into my Speak Your Mind equation here, Ipe. Just a ridiculous day on Twitter. Like the memes you see filing through are crazy. But yeah, what's crazy is eBay was making like millions and millions of dollars worth of bets, but there was a tweet out there that says, here's the highest wager he ever placed, and then here's the lowest wager he ever placed, $10. Like, what a weird...
One of us!
What a weird gambling strategy, I guess you could say. Well, like, why one day you're picking millions and millions of dollars to bet things on, and then the next day, yeah, I'll bet $10 today. That's like, why?
He's a degenerate. It's no other way around it. He placed it was an average, I think, of 22 a day at like around $12,000. That's a degenerate.
Yeah.
He said, like, there's one quote floating out there is like, oh yeah, I'm loving soccer. It's on 24/7. Like, just thinking about that. You know, the craziest thing about all that, his bookie's trying to get in contact. The bookie is trying to get in contact with Ipe. Walks past Shohei walking his dog. And is like, hey, man, I'm about to go talk to Shohei. If you don't call me back and get me my money, like, that's insane.
My question is, maybe I'm naive for having this thinking, but Shohei can get outside and walk his dog. I figured the minute he steps foot outside his house, he'll just get swarmed by people. I figured he was, he's so private. I figured he wasn't even able to do stuff like that. I figured he's the type of celebrity where he probably has to Instacart groceries and I don't know, things like that.
He's achieved a level of wealth. He can live with other extremely famous people.
That's probably true. But I still feel like if you're walking your dog out in the neighborhood, there could be people that recognize you.
Shohei's not getting... He lives somewhere where he cannot get swarmed.
Yet, this so-called bookie just happened to see him and could walk right up to him.
He was probably conveniently outside his house. I'm going to take a guess. There's probably a reason he was in the area. Notice how this bookie also, like, when you're $4 million in debt to something, pretty much the bookie knows, I'm sure, a lot about Ipe to know where to come collect. So that's just fair. It's just crazy, man. He is this is like what peak degenerate gambling looks like. That's what it is. That is an insane amount of money he was spending on gambling. An insane amount.
Yeah, it's crazy. Shout out to John Heyman, by the way, who will never be allowed on this podcast, as we've talked about, who tweets here on Thursday night, everyone's killing Ipe the interpreter, but give him this. He showed good restraint, not betting on baseball. What?
Yeah, well, John Heyman is John Heyman, Lyle. I don't know what else you expect. Like, he is one of one. What's really a shame of all this, I want to hear OJ's take on the Sale situation.
What a day on Twitter. Like, nonstop, I'm seeing memes left and right. Even when it's usually a very miserable place, it does have its moments.
I think Ipe should have, instead of turning himself into authorities just for the heck of it and just to honor OJ, he should have driven a Bronco down the 405. Just had the stream after him.
Yeah, well,
quite a visual.
Could you imagine turning on the TV and it's like a part 2 of the saga, but it's Ipe driving in a white Bronco?
I actually cannot imagine that. I physically cannot imagine that.
It's crazy. And then, again, let it not be forgotten, this morning, before all this other stuff, we hear that Jordan Montgomery says, yeah, I'm done with Scott Boras. I'm switching agents. I'm going to Wasserman. I'm not putting up with your shit anymore.
There's one. And then the dominoes will continue to fall.
Oh, I hope so. I hope they do. This
is your dream right here. It's happening.
Well, it just feels, I don't want to say inevitable, but different than other off seasons, because Jordan Montgomery is not the first player to leave Scott Boras and find a new agent, but it just feels like after the hell of an offseason that Scott Boras had, just an absolute disaster, that there is a real changing of the guard that could be in place here.
Well, we're going to have to see. It will take more than just Jordan Montgomery. I mean, he's going to have to start losing major clients. And the problem is, all the people who already signed massive free agent deals aren't going to leave. And Boras keeps getting paid. Right? He'll still, Bryce Harper's not going to change his agent. Manny's not going to change his agent. He's already got his deal. Doesn't need anything else.
Manny wasn't a Boris guy.
Manny, huh? Anyway, I would say a big teller will be Mr. Soto in this offseason. What will Juan Soto do? I feel like he holds more cards than the rest right now because he's next up.
Well, I was going to say, is there any chance he changes agents before he hits free agency?
I think he will be a major telling point to what everyone else does. It makes sense that if Montgomery or Blake Snell or Matt Chapman made this decision because he had just essentially fucked them over with his negotiating strategy. Juan Soto has not been fucked over yet. So is he going to jump ahead of the issue, or is he going to trust Scott Boras will not make the same mistake 2 off seasons in a row?
I'll say this. If Juan Soto sticks with Scott Boras, most likely he will as he heads into free agency. Scott Boras cannot mess this one up because this isn't Matt Chapman. This isn't even Blake Snell, who's won 2 Cy Youngs. This is a 26-year-old megastar free agent who is well on track to the Hall of Fame. 26 years old, he's hitting free agency. Scott Boras cannot mess this contract up for his own sake. Now, if he were to mess it up bad enough where Juan Soto got some 1-year deal or 2-year deal, guess what? Then Juan Soto would hit free agency again at 28. He'd find a new agent by that point. But if you're Scott Boras, you cannot mess this deal up. You better get Juan Soto as $500,000 or you're going to have a lot of bad light shined on you, buddy.
This is Scott Boras' walk here, essentially. No pressure.
I agree with that. It's going to be interesting. Hey, maybe Juan wants to change agents and come to Seattle.
Then
Just
we
kidding.
could open the door.
Yeah, right.
We can give him Root Sports as collateral.
What would the contract, what would the budget for Juan Soto be? $80 million?
A year?
Yeah. 1 for 65. There we go.
Oh, perfect. Works for all parties. He'll be 27 back on the market.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch Juan Soto and what he does and what Scott Boras does this winter. But ultimately, it is days like this that Twitter makes you realize, wow, it does have its perks. It really does. Whew. Okay. I think that'll just about wrap up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. If you want to listen to the full form podcast, you can do so wherever you get your audio pods. If you're listening, make sure to do us a favor, download those episodes, write a review, leave a 5-star review. Why not, right? Not only are you leaving a nice review, but you're doing us a big favor. If you're watching, hit that subscribe button. It's free. It's easy. It takes 1 second to do. Like this video, drop a comment below. Again, tell us your walk-up songs. Tell us who your 3 best Mariners pitches are, all that stuff. And then, if you want to keep seeing our social media content, we're always active there. Check us out across our social platforms. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.